Steel glances from a pale king's throat as he stumbles on the rain-slicked stones, his breath torn away by the roar of 10,000 voices. The Hornburg shakes under the fists of Isengard, ladders buck and splinter, men scream and vanish into black water. Above them all, framed in lightning, Theoden King sways in the saddle of Snowmane, eyes clouded, mouth so slow to form the words that must be spoken, while below a white hand banner climbs the wall like a rising tide. If you're drawn into this darker turn in Rohan's fate, tap like, ride with the channel by subscribing, and tell me in the comments, if war came to your door, which realm of Middle-earth would you stand for, and why? Snow sifts down, white and silent, into the deeping coombe, but it is ash, not winter's gift, riding the wind from burning trenches and warrengenes. Theoden clutches his spear, knuckles bloodless, while the thunder of the Uruk-hai is a single grinding sound. Shields, boots, drums, the hiss of torches. His mind swims as though underwater. Worm tongues, whispers long driven from Meduseld, yet cling like cobwebs in the corners of his thoughts. Forth, Eorlingas! He tries to cry, but the word forth crumbles in his throat. It comes out thick, strangled, half-formed. Gimli below looks up with unease at the hesitation. Beside Theoden, Aragorn leans close, rain dripping from his dark hair, eyes searching the king's face. "My lord," Aragorn says urgently, pitched low so that only Theoden might hear. "Ride now." While they waver at the gate, below them, at the foot of the ramp, the host of Isengard swirls in confusion from the first sortie. Riders and spearmen have driven out in a hard wedge, scattering the foremost ranks. For a fleeting moment, the Uruk assault stutters, but Theoden's vision swims. Something in his chest seizes. His fingers slacken on Snowmane's reins. "Worm," he breathes without knowing why. Aragorn's hand darts forward, but too late. Theoden's eyes roll back. The king of the Marks slumps sideways, armor clattering, and falls from the saddle with a heavy, sickening sound upon the stone causeway. Time does not slow. It lurches. Snowmane rears, shrieking. The nearest guards grab for his reins. Aragorn drops to his knees at the king's side, rain hammering on his shoulders, the battle's rhythm suddenly far away. "Theoden!" Aragorn presses his hand to the king's throat. There is a flutter, thin and failing. The pupils are unfocused, wandering, already turned inward. Eomer is not there to see his uncle fall. Banished long before, he rides the Eastamnet in another story that never came to pass. Here, at Helm's Deep, it is only gambling and scattered captains, peasants with spears, old men and boys, waiting for a command that does not come. The Uruks recover Isengard. They howl, fists pounding on shields, blades beating time. A drum answers from the dark, deep, booming, relentless. Ladders are thrust up again, grapnels bite into stone, new ranks pour through the culvert, where fire has torn a gaping, wound in the wall. The brief hesitation is devoured. On the causeway, men stare, mouths open, as they see their king still and unmoving upon the stones. Gambling whispers, no, not as denial, but as a plea to the rain itself. An arrow whistles past Aragorn's head. He looks up, eyes bright with sudden, terrible clarity. Around them, the defense is unraveling by instants, like a frayed rope. "Get him inside!" Aragorn shouts to the guards. "To the keep! Hold the gate!" The men hesitate, torn between fear for their king and dread of turning their backs upon the oncoming horde. Then one moves, then another. Theoden is lifted, limp as a broken banner, carried back toward the Hornburg's door. For the first time since the horn sounded in the night, the men of Rohan fight without eyes upon them from a royal saddle, and the deep begins to break. In the citadel above, A child named Tora, no more than 9, feels the tremor of many heavy feet through the flagstones. She clutches her little brother's hand, listening as the distant shouts change their timbre from defiance into something thinner and more desperate. The air tastes of chalk and iron. Is that victory? Her brother asks, voice shaking. Tora does not answer. Somewhere above, horns are blowing again, but they are not steady. They are frantic. One stutters into silence mid-note. Rain streams down the aged walls. Torches gutter, their flames stretched sideways by the wind. Along the ramparts, the defenders fall back, step by step, as fresh ladders rise faster than they can be flung aside. Aragorn and Gimli stand at the inner gate, fighting amid a crush of bodies. The earlier charge that in another age would have ridden out to scatter the besiegers never fully forms. No king's cry leads it, no shining spear cuts the rain. Instead, the men on the causeway are slow to reform, uncertain, faltering. When they do ride, they are too few, too late, thrown back by a mass of iron and muscle and will. In the shadowed east, far beyond the black-backed ridges, a white tower gleams cold in the night, and its master feels the turning. Saruman stands in the ring of Isengard, rain sliding down the curve of Orthanc like tears never shed. In his hand, the palantir is black, veiled. He does not need it tonight. The far-seeing of his mind follows the heartbeat of his army as a conductor hears the orchestra in his bones. He senses the gap where a will has suddenly gone silent. So, he murmurs, almost gently. The old king falls. No triumph breaks his voice, only a slow satisfaction and an old weary grief, twisted into something else. Wormtongue played his part well enough in the end. Grima shifts in the gloom behind him. The rain makes him shiver in his threadbare robe, but he dares not step closer to the shelter of the tower. My lord, Grima ventures. Does that mean? It means, Saruman says, that the house of Eorl shudders as a house without a beam, and houses built without beams may be reshaped or raised. He lifts his hand. Far to the west, almost beyond hearing, drums answer. At Helm's Deep, the outer wall is lost. Men flee along the ramp, stumbling over the dead. Arrows hiss past them from behind as the Uruks reach the parapet and plant the white hand in the rain, its paint running like blood. Aragorn staggers into the Hornburg's great hall, sword dripping, hair lank with water. He looks like a man dragged from a river. Theoden lies upon a table, armor half unbuckled, face waxen. His breath is shallow, rattling. Éowyn kneels beside him, her white dress stained with mud and smoke. Her hands tremble as she brushes a strand of gray hair from his forehead. Is he? Aragorn starts. Alive, Éowyn says, but the word has no weight. For now. She looks up, and for the first time since their meeting, the steel in her eyes wavers. You said he was cured, that the shadow was past. Aragorn flinches. There is a guilt he did not expect to bear. The sorcery that bound his will was broken, but the years it stole, some wounds cannot be undone. He looks down at the king's hand, the way the fingers twitch as if grasping for something just out of reach. Battle has taken the rest. Then what do we do? Éowyn whispers. Outside, a roar of triumph swells. An enemy cheer far too close. Aragorn knows the right words. In another world, ride out with me. For death and glory, for Rohan. He knows the charge that should come, the dawn that should break upon a white rider cresting the ridge. But dawn is still hours away, and there is no white rider. Aragorn hears the timbers of the inner gate creak under blows. His choice lies stark before him. Die in a last, glorious sortie, that will perhaps buy an hour or retreat yet further into the keep, into the caverns, dragging these people deeper into the mountain with only stone behind them. Every story he has heard of Helm's Deep speaks of making a stand at the wall, at the gate, upon the causeway. None speak of hiding in the bones of the earth while the enemy runs over the fortress like a flood. He meets Éowyn's gaze. "Take the king," he says quietly, "into the glittering caves. You and the women, the children, the old. Go now." Her lip curls. "You would have me cower in darkness while you fall. I would have you live," Aragorn answers. "Rohan will need a voice yet, even if its walls fall silent. If he dies, you are the last of his house within these walls." Her eyes flash. "Éomer yet lives, far from here, and I cannot count on what lies beyond my sight." He tightens his hand on his sword hilt. This fortress was meant to hold until help came. That hope is lost. Now it must buy time only for escape. In the back of the hall, a murmur runs through the men. The word escape, spoken aloud by one they barely know. The idea of abandoning this ancient stronghold cuts deep. Gambling steps forward, weary but unbowed. "We cannot outrun them with children in our arms," he says. "Not across open country, we will not," Aragorn says. "We will vanish beneath their feet." He turns to Hamas' son, a thin boy too young for the armor he wears. "You know the paths into the caves, the old dwarf roads?" The boy nods, eyes wide. "Then you will guide them. Torches, water, as much food as you can bear." Aragorn's voice hardens. Go. Éowyn lingers a heartbeat longer, torn between fury and a deeper understanding. Then, with a swallow that seems to hurt, she nods. "Do not let him die without a blade in your hand, son of Arathorn," she says, and there is sorrow in her formality. He allows himself the barest ghost of a smile. "That I can promise." The keep's doors shudder as another ram blow lands. Deep below, in the cavern mouths, the first of the refugees begin to move, driven not by ordered evacuation, but by the vague, shapeless fear that has been building since midnight. Mothers clutch infants, old shepherds lean on staffs, wide-eyed farm boys carry spears they can barely lift. The sound of their passage is a constant low rustle, like a subterranean river. Tora and her brother are jostled forward, away from the light. She looks back once, toward the high, thin windows of the Hornburg, where lightning sketches the battlements like broken teeth against the sky. "Stay close," she whispers, "no matter what." She has no sword, no shield, only the promise to hold on to. Above, the end of the fortress, as the Rohirrim know it, begins. The inner gate cracks. Splinters fly. Through the breach pours a tide of iron and snarling faces. The defenders fight like trapped wolves, giving ground only when a body falls. Gimli disappears momentarily beneath a swinging halberd, then reappears at the Uruk's knee, axe rising and falling in brutal, economical strokes. "Barak Khazad!" His shout echoes off the stone, but for every Uruk he fells, two more climb over the dead. Aragorn fights at the foot of the stair that leads up into the keep, blade whirling, knocking aside thrusts, driving his own point into joints of armor. He feels every cut, every bruise, but cannot stop. Each man who retreats behind him is one more mouth to feed in the dark, one more pair of eyes that might witness another dawn. The Hornburg's great hall becomes a slaughterhouse of echoes, steel on steel, gasped prayers, the wet cough of those who will not rise again. Rain blows in through arrow slits, mixing with the smell of blood and smoke. Saruman feels the fortress's pulse falter, then fail. In Orthanc, the wizard closes his eyes and listens. There is no joy in him as he senses Helm's Deep's gates breaking. Once, long ago, he might have admired the Rohirrim's stubborn valor, their clinging to old oaths. Now he marks the pattern of their fall as a craftsman examines a flawed stone. Too much pride, he says softly, to no one. Too little foresight. They built for walls, and not for the world. Grima dares a step nearer, and now, Lord, they will kneel. Oh, no, Saruman says, opening his eyes. They will not kneel, not yet, not these. He gestures westward. They will run, and they will hide, and then they will call it courage. But the mark has lost its king in the sight of his men. That echo will not stop at a single valley. He turns, his white robes sweeping rain from the stone, and finally he sets his hand upon the Palantir. Far away, in the dark land where Mount Doom breathes like a great sleeper, another eye stirs at the same instant. Saruman feels, as he always does, the brush of that greater will, the sense of a gaze that could crush mountains if focused. He is careful, so careful. He shapes his thoughts not as a rival, but as a faithful hound bringing in the quarry. I strike, he whispers into the black. The horse lords are broken, the ridings of the west lie open. For a heartbeat there is rage, not at him, but at the flicker of hope the west still holds. Then satisfaction, like a cold wind. The Palantir burns his hand, he smiles and does not pull away. Back in the deep, the last defenders fall back into the stairwell. Aragorn is one of the final 5 to cross the threshold before Gimli hews the supports and brings a cascade of stone down behind them, blocking the passage with a choking cloud of dust. They stand there, panting in the dim light of a few torches, listening as the Uruks howl beyond the new wall of shattered rock. Trapped, a man moans. Sheltered, Aragorn corrects. We have bought ourselves a little time. Use it well. He sheathes his sword, the blade sticky with too much use. The motion is strangely final, like setting a seal upon one chapter of his life. Come, he says. We go to the caves. They descend. The glittering caves of Aglarond are a wonder in any age. Here, stone hangs like frozen water, veined with light that seems not to come from torch or moon. Columns rise like the trunks of titanic trees, throwing strangely delicate shadows. Tonight, they are crowded with huddled shapes and the hot, sour smell of fear. The refugees shrink back as armored men emerge from the side passages, helmets under their arms, faces gray. For a moment, there is only a terrible silence. Then someone, somewhere, asks the question no one wants to voice. Do we hold? Aragorn looks out over the sea of faces. Farmers, servants, blacksmiths, children with fingers in their ears. Éowyn kneels by Theoden's pallet, which has been laid upon a bank of smooth rock. The king still breathes. Each breath is a shallow dip in a pool, fast running dry. Aragorn's gaze lingers on him only a heartbeat before he lifts it. We do not hold, he says. Truth, not comfort, not these walls. The Hornburg has fallen, a ripple like wind in tall grass. Some cry out, others simply sag, as if a long-feared blow has finally landed. But we are not yet taken, Aragorn continues. And while this mountain stands above us, we have choices. The Uruks will search the keep, and they will find the passages. But these caves run deep and wide, with ways that only the hillmen and the dwarves remember. We can slip out into the night, single file, scattered, hidden by the rocks. Into what? Gambling demands. Weariness has stripped the courtliness from his tone, leaving only the grizzled captain. They ring us all about. Their scouts will be in the valleys and on the heights. The mark is burning. Aragorn nods once. Then we do not all go. Some must distract them. draw their gaze away so most may pass unseen. A murmur of protest at that, but also of grim comprehension. They are Rohirrim. They know the weight of sacrifice. I will ride out from a side gate, Aragorn says. Those of you who can still bear arms, who will not leave, come with me. We will break from the mountain at dawn in full sight. While they answer that, the rest of you vanish into the hills. Gimli huffs. And where do these rest go, Master Aragorn? To Edoras, which may already fly the white hand? To Dunharrow, with no king to rally them? To the Eastamnet, where the Easterlings roam? Where in this wide world is safe for them now? It is a question that arcs forward, far beyond this dark cavern. Aragorn answers in the only way he can. They go where Sauron's hand is slowest to close. To Gondor, if the way can be found, to the far Westfold farms, if they are not yet trampled, to any hall where a door still stands open. But they do so alive, not hewn down in a corridor. He looks at Éowyn, not flinching from the hurt in her eyes. You must lead them. She stares at him as if he has struck her. Lead them? With what authority? With the last of your houses, he says. Theoden's banner must not fall entirely, even if its fortress has. Her hands tremble as she looks back at her uncle. His eyelids flutter as if caught by some distant sound, though his mind is far away. Speak to them, Aragorn says softly. Tell them what you will. But lead them out, Lady of Rohan. I will not see you waste your life against stone when the mark may yet have need of you. She rises slowly. The faces in the cavern turn toward her as men turn instinctively toward any hint of a standard in the storm. Éowyn is pale as marble, a smudge of soot on one cheek. Her hair is unbound, a spill of gold in the half-light. For a moment, she seems about to refuse. Then something tightens in her jaw. All my life, she says, voice clearer than she feels, I have watched the men of my land ride out, and I have stayed behind in golden halls. I have poured wine. I have sung songs. I have asked no more than to be allowed to stand where the wind is sharp and the blade is honest. She looks at her uncle, but he would not have me throw away the last of his line, not for pride. So I will do what I have never done. I will flee. A whisper, shocked. Flee? Yet they do not turn from her. I will flee in order to live, she continues, not for my own sake, but for yours. You who have no swords, you who carry no spears. The mark is more than its riders. It is you, your stories, your songs, your stubbornness. Her gaze hardens. We will go through the dark. We will go into wild places. We will walk until our feet bleed, and we will not die easy. Her eyes find Aragorn again, and there is accusation and acknowledgement in them both. But know this, she says to all of them, we do not leave Helm's Deep because we are defeated. We leave because we are taken from it. There is a difference. The White Hand may rule our stones, but not our will. Not while I draw breath. Slowly, like embers kindling, a low murmur of assent rises. It is not a cheer they are too tired to cheer, but some of the hopelessness flees their faces. Gambling bows just a little. Say the word, my lady, he says, and we will follow. Éowyn breathes out. A decision settles upon her like a mantle. Gather what you can carry, she orders. Water, bread, every scrap of rope and cloth. We march within the hour, quietly. No cries. She looks up at the cava roof as if she can see through stone to the sky. And for those who do not come, her voice softens. May your last sight be the dawn. In the Hornburg above, the last torches gutter and go out. Uruk-hai prowl the great hall, kicking over benches, tearing down banners, roaring their victory into the rafters. The horse head of Rohan is dragged from the wall and trampled into torn, wet silk. The white hand of Saruman rises over Helm's Deep, crude on a field of black, flapping in the rain. On the battlements, a man of Westfold, who had hidden beneath the bodies of his fellows, crawls to the wall and looks out. The valley below is a crawling field of torches, stretching down into the dark like a river of fire. He begins to laugh, high and thin, until an Uruk finds him and ends the sound with a swift, practical shove. Dawn comes gray and cold, without splendor. Aragorn rides out from a postern gate with less than 200 riders at his back. They bear no banner. Their armor is dulled by soot, their horses' flanks lathered already from the cramped caverns. But their eyes are fierce. From the cliffs above, unseen, Éowyn watches them go. She has refused to say farewell. She cannot bear another parting at a threshold. "Look," whispers Torra beside her. "They go into them, into the orcs." She is not wrong. The host of Isengard, many thousands yet, masses in the Coombe, regrouping in rough ranks. Saruman's captains had not expected a sally from broken defenders. For a fragile moment, surprise tilts the field. Aragorn raises his sword. The word he has spoken so often in stories wells up in his throat, an inheritance of others' courage. "For Rohan," he cries. The shout returns from 200 throats, ripping the thin morning. They thunder down. The first shield wall of Uruks shatters under the impact, iron bodies flung aside like ninepins. Smoke and mist blur the edges of the world. Blades flash, horses scream. The Rohirrim carve a path through the disordered front ranks with a ferocity born of despair. It is a ride meant not to break the enemy, but to draw its eye, and draw it they do. Horns blare. Orders are bellowed in black speech. The neat lines of Saruman's army flinch, then flood toward the point of impact like a wound's lips closing. Under cover of this sudden chaos, far up in the sides of the Coombe, small figures slip from hidden cracks and goat paths, moving like a scattered trickle of ants. Éowyn leads them, cloak the color of stone, hair hidden beneath a man's helm. She does not look down again. The battle below turns slowly like a grindstone. At first, it seems almost possible. Aragorn's smaller force wheels and strikes, never staying long at one knot before moving, always moving, leaving behind piles of dead. The Uruks, crowded and jostling, struggle to coordinate, but there are so many. Soon they begin to hem the riders in, forming living walls of muscle and metal. Arrows, at first ragged, then more disciplined, arc from behind the lines, seeking horse and man. Aragorn's helm is struck from his head by a near-miss hair streaming. He rides on, jaw set. At his side, Gimli bellows with each swing, his beard matted, his arms leaden. A horse stumbles and goes down, chest pierced, its rider rolls clear, only to be swallowed in a black tide. Another is pulled from the saddle by hooked blades. The ring tightens. On a ridge to the east, a tall figure in black mail watches through a spyglass of polished glass and cunning steel. At his side stands a man in the livery of Isengard, bearing a white hand upon his breast. "Riders," the man says unnecessarily. The captain lowers the glass. His face is Dunlending, broad cheekbones, weathered skin, eyes that have seen generations of his folk driven from these green lands. Yet now he fights for the wizard who promised him vengeance. "Let them ride," he says. "They wish to be seen. See them then, and close your hand." Down on the field, the riders are swallowed. Aragorn finds himself suddenly cut off from the main knot. Pressed toward a low rise, Gimli is gone from his side. He turns, frantically seeking, but sees only flashes of axes, helms indistinct in the press. An Uruk lunges at him. Pike leveled, he cuts it away, spurs his horse up the little hill. From there, just for a moment, he looks back. The world seems made of black, white, and red. Black armor, white hands, red mud. His riders are scattered, fighting in isolated clumps. Some have turned their horses outward, pressing them flank to flank in little circles of defiance. Others lie still. Aragorn knows then, with the clear, brutal knowledge of the battlefield, that no one here is meant to survive. He lifts his sword one last time. In the heights, Tora, picking her way along a narrow ledge, hears a distant shout, the words torn apart by distance and wind. She will remember it all her life, though she does not know its meaning then. Not all is lost. And then the Uruks close over that hill, and the man with no crown is gone from sight. The scream that tears from Eowyn's throat is small, voiceless, swallowed by the mountain. She stumbles, nearly dragging those beside her over the edge. Then she regains herself with an effort so great it makes her see sparks. "We do not look back," she rasps. "We do not look down." Her brother's name burns on her tongue, unspoken. Eoma. Somewhere in the Eastamnet, perhaps he feels a sudden cold, as if a shadow has fallen over his heart. Behind them, Helm's Deep smokes. By midday, order has returned to the host of Isengard. Saruman arrives at the Hornburg, not astride a beast, but borne in a dark-wheeled carriage of iron and blackened wood, drawn by great horses with chains instead of reins. The carriage creaks to a halt beneath the broken gate, mud splattering its sides. He steps down like a king visiting an old conquered friend. The inner hall stinks of orc and blood. Broken furniture litters the floor, the tapestries have been torn down, the hearth is cold. Saruman walks to the high seat where Theoden once sat, where countless kings before watched their warriors feast. He mounts the steps and stands before it, but does not sit. Instead, he turns, facing the shattered doorway and the valley beyond. "You stood long," he says softly, addressing the empty air, "but you never learned to bend. Now I will see if your people are more supple when separated from your stones." Grima sidles up, face bruised from some earlier disagreement with an Uruk sergeant. His eyes flick anxiously from the wizard to the doorway. "My lord, some of them escaped. Into the hills. We have reports of quarry lost in the dark." Saruman's eyes half close. For a moment, a spasm of irritation crosses his features, more at the waste of resources than at the survival of a handful of refugees. Then it passes. "They will not be forgotten," he says. "Send forth the Wolf-Ridders, harrow the Westfold. Let the mark of the White Hand be left on every steading that ever gave a horse to these kings. But do not waste the host on a wild hunt." His gaze drops to the floor where Theoden's throne casts a shadow. The greater game moves on. He descends the steps. "Begin the work," he commands, and the work begins. In the weeks that follow, the deeping coombe changes. Trees are felled not by axe alone, but by saw and fire and cruel devices of metal that bite and rip. The sound is never-ending. A high, tearing shriek, the crack of trunks, the groan of roots pulled from earth. The earth itself is cut and heaped. Trenches of burning pitch ring the Hornburg. Warding off any night raid, great platforms are built along the cliffs, from which engines may hurl stones or worse. The clear streams that once ran pure now carry a thin scum of ash and oil. The White Hand flies from the highest tower, its fingers splayed over Rohan like a promise. A garrison of mixed breed takes up residence, Uruk-hai, fierce and orderly. their discipline under Saruman's iron command starkly different from the ragged packs of Mordor human warriors from Dunland. Hard-eyed and hungry, their families settled in hastily built longhouses near the base of the fortress, a scattering of black Garadan from beyond Isengard's original borders, drawn by pay and plunder. For the first time in 1,000 years, Helm's Deep is not a bulwark of the Mark, but a blade aimed at its heart. Out in the Westfold, smoke pillars rise, hunters in green cloaks move like whispers between the hills. They are not yet an organized resistance, only scattered bands of those who would not flee, who could not reach Gondor, who had nowhere to go. But they know every fold of the land. They know which streams run deep, which copses can hide 70 men, and they know, with a raw, unshakable knowledge, what they have lost. In a stone hollow, near a burned steading, a fire crackles low. Around it sit 12 men and women, farmers, herders, a single aging rider whose horse limps. Eowyn stands with her back to the rock, arms folded, watching them. She has changed. The white dress is gone. She wears now a leather jerkin over a rough wool tunic, breeches and boots scuffed by long miles. Her hair is braided tight to keep it from her eyes. A sword hangs at her hip, not for ceremony now, but for use. One of the farmers, a broad-shouldered woman named Hilda, jabs a stick into the fire, so we hide in holes and nooks, Hilda says bitterly, while that... She jerks her chin toward the faint smear of smoke on the horizon that marks the deep. That sits on our rock and eats our grain. It will eat more than our grain if we rush it blindly, says Gambling, sitting with his back to another wall, cleaning his sword. His hair is more gray than when he rode into the Hornburg, his eyes deeper set. We have seen what they can do in the open. We cannot beat them field to field. We are not riders, Eowyn says. Not anymore. We are ghosts. The word chills even her. She had not meant to say it like that. A ghost can do what a knight cannot. Slip through walls, strike from shadows, make noise in one place while moving in another. They will dominate the roads. We will own the spaces between. Hilda snorts. Fine words. But where do they get us? What do we win? We cannot retake Helm's Deep with a score of blacksmiths. We win time, Eowyn says, for those who fled south to cross the White Mountains if they can, for those who reached Dunharrow and now argue in its tents, for those in Edoras who bend their necks and wait to see if the yoke will tighten. A younger man, barely of age, spits into the fire. Edoras is lost. They say the king is dead. He glances at Eowyn, then drops his eyes. Begging your pardon, my lady, Eowyn's throat tightens. Theoden had not yet breathed his last. When they left the cave, she clings stubbornly to the idea that somewhere back there, in that dark hole, his chest still rises and falls. But whether he lives or not is almost beside the point now. The hall is stone, she says quietly. The people are flesh. Stone can be taken. Flesh can move. Some cannot move, Gambling reminds her. The very young, the old. Not everyone followed you into the hills. She knows. At night, she sees faces she left behind. Faces she never saw at all, but imagines. We win time, she repeats, more for herself this time. And perhaps allies. Gambling raises an eyebrow. Allies? You mean Gondor? What good are stone towers and their swan knights to us while the White Hand sits on our throat? Not only Gondor, Eowyn says. Her gaze goes distant to the line of the White Mountains. There are older powers in these lands than the horses of the Mark and the stones of Minas Tirith. I have heard tales of the halflings who outwitted Saruman's own master. of an elf king in the golden wood, of a ranger who may yet live, though the orcs say he died. Gambling snorts. And I have heard tales of dragons beneath the north and fish that fly. We cannot build hope on songs. No, Eowyn agrees. We build it on action, on making this land as costly to hold as possible. Helm's Deep is ours in more than name. It remembers the feet that trod its halls. Let us make it remember us still. Far away on the Anduin shore, another drama unfolds, one that in another turn of the world would converge with Rohan in a blaze of spears. Here, its lines run skewed. Gandalf the White, returning from his struggle with the Balrog, rides Shadowfax across leagues of grass that are not yet scoured by war. He comes to adore us with urgency, as before, and he finds Theoden under Wormtongue's spell. But this time, when he casts Saruman from the king's mind and the light returns to Theoden's gaze, it is not enough. Theoden rises, yes. He feels the weight of his sword in his hand, the strength returning to his limbs. He hears of his son's death, and his eyes harden. He calls for his riders. He throws down Grima, who flees clattering down the steps of Meduseld. And then, just as plans are laid for the muster to Helm's Deep, just as scouts ride with news of an army marching from Isengard, just as Gandalf himself goes to seek Elmer, another messenger comes, breathless and pale, from the Westfold. This messenger brings a single word, fallen. Gandalf's face, for once, goes very still. When? He demands. Last night, the rider gasps. We saw the fire on the clouds, no more beacon from the tower. Our men retreated as they could. So many were lost on the road. We barely escaped the orc patrols. The Hornburg is no more ours. Theoden stares as if turned to stone. Fallen? He repeats, voice thin. Helm's Deep? You are sure? Yes, Lord, the hall of Meduseld murmurs. Gandalf closes his eyes briefly. For all his foresight, for all his weaving of plans, here is a thread that has slipped beyond his hand's reach. In his mind, he sees Aragorn riding through the storm to a doomed fortress. He sees no white rider cresting the ridge, no sunrise charge. We are late, he says. The words taste like ash. Theoden, suddenly old again, grips the arm of his throne. What do we do, Mithrandir? He whispers. If the deep is gone, what wall have we left to stand behind? Gandalf opens his eyes. There is still fire in them, but it flickers. You stand behind no wall, he says. You ride before them. You go into the fields, into the villages, not to defend stones, but to gather hearts. Saruman now holds one fortress, and much fear. Let him hold it. You must hold your people. He does not say what else he thinks, that to march on Helm's Deep now, with Saruman freshly victorious and his armies well supplied, would be to march into a slaughter. Even with Ilmer's 3,000, even with Gandalf's own power, the odds tilt too far. The White Rider retreats. One of the marshals mutters under his breath, not quite quietly enough. Gandalf's gaze cuts to him. No, he chooses his battlefield. The shadow grows in many places. Mordor stirs. Gondor will soon cry out. And now Rohan is sundered within itself. A king in Edoras, a wizard in Helm's Deep, a people in between. He turns to Theoden. Saruman wishes you to dash your strength against his new anvil. Do not. Ride west, yes, but not to throw yourself at his walls. Ride to gather those who flee him. Ride to threaten his lines of supply, to burn his forges, to cut his wagons. Make him turn his gaze from Gondor back to you. That, at least, you can still do. Theoden's hands grind upon the wood. The idea of letting Helm's Deep remain under the White Hand's banner galls him to the bone. That fortress is not merely stone. It is memory, legacy, a promise, but he is a king, and kings, if they are wise, must sometimes swallow their pride with their bread. At least, he says hoarsely, tell me that some of my people escaped, that Éowyn he cannot finish. Gandalf's sad gaze softens. Éowyn is not in the caves, he says. She took those she could and vanished into the Westfold. She lives, for now. Relief hits Theoden like a blow. His shoulders sag. He swallows. Then she may curse me for not going to die at her side. Gandalf shakes his head. She may yet come to understand. Death is kind in its simplicity. Life in the shadow is far more bitter and braver. He glances east, toward where the first dark clouds of Mordor's war are gathering. The days of standing in one place and daring the enemy to come are ending, he murmurs. The war of movement begins, and Saruman, with his machines and drilled legions, thinks it is his age. Let him think so. There are other strengths in this world. Above Helm's deep, a storm gathers. Saruman walks the parapet, cloak snapping in the wind. Reports drift to him like leaves. Raids on supply wagons, disappeared patrols, sudden fires in the night along the outer farms. The Dunlendings grow restive. They did not come here to be hunted. Even some of the Uruk-hai, bred for obedience, grumble at the taste of this war in the hills where the enemy will not meet them squarely. So, Saruman muses. They learn. Grima, always at his shadow, hunched and watchful, licks his lips. They are annoyances, my lord, burrs on the cloak. They cannot threaten your hold on the Hornburg. No, Saruman agrees. A flea cannot fell an Oliphaunt, but 100 fleas can drive it mad. And some of these fleas have teeth in the old places. They know the songs. The land hears them. He pauses, fingertips resting on the cold stone. Send word, he says suddenly, to those riders to the south, the black-helmed men of the Harad, the raiders from Khand. Tell them their horses will run on green fields yet, that the mark is open to them. Let them attack the villages. Let them burn. Let the people see many banners, many faces of fear. Confuse their hatred. Make me the lesser terror compared to the nameless. Grima blinks. But Lord, they are Sauron's men. They are fear, Saruman snaps, and fear has only one master in the end. Do as I say. When he is alone again, he touches the Palantir. In its depths, he sees a city of white stone, tier upon tier, carved into a mountain's flank. He sees a white tree dead upon a courtyard. He sees a steward grown thin and bitter, staring eastward with hollow eyes. Gondor must not be allowed time to breathe. Helm's Deep is a blade in Rohan's side, but the heart of men still beats in Minas Tirith. If Theoden pours his strength into defending his people from one set of wolves, perhaps he will have none to spare when the dragon comes. In the hills, Éowyn's resistance grows. They strike where they can. An isolated patrol ambushed in a narrow ravine, a supply column set ablaze in the night, a messenger captured and sent back blindfolded. His tale meant as both warning and legend. Tora grows into a runner, her quick feet learning every goat track between 3 secret camps. Her brother learns to string a bow without trembling. Hilda's son falls in an ill-timed skirmish 3 miles from home. Each death carves new hollow in Éowyn's heart. Sometimes, in the cold hours before dawn, she remembers the feel of polished marble beneath her feet, the warmth of the golden hall, the songs of the evening. In those moments, some part of her despises the woman she has become, dirty, scarred, forever calculating how many lives to spend for how few gains. Yet, when she hears of a village that held out because a supply train never reached its garrison, When a child from that village comes into their camp alive, clutching a tattered toy and staring around in wonder, something in her unclenches. "Lady," Tora says one night, mustering an immense courage, "will we ever go back to how it was?" Éowyn looks at her, at the smudge of soot across her nose, the tooth and wrists. "No," she says honestly, "we will not." Tora swallows hard. "But," Éowyn adds, and there is a softer note, "we may go forward to something else, something that remembers what we lost but does not pretend it never happened. A Rohan that knows it can fall." Tora tilts her head. "Why is that better?" "Because," Éowyn replies, "pride is a fine thing until it blinds you. We were too sure of our walls. Now we know the earth can shake. That knowing might yet save us from other falls." Far to the south, in the great harbors of Gondor, black sails begin to unfurl. Denethor hears of Helm's Deep in a brief, curt report. His lip curls. "Weaklings," he mutters. "They could not hold one valley." Yet when Gandalf comes with news of Saruman's new strength, of the White Hand on the Hornburg and the running fights across the Mark, even cynical Denethor cannot wholly ignore it. "If Rohan is split between king and usurper," he says, "bluntly, what help can we expect when Mordor moves in earnest?" "You may expect less cavalry and more refugees," Gandalf answers. "But do not discount what a hunted people can do when given a chance. Saruman's hold is not yet absolute. The house of Eorl still breathes, if in tatters. Theoden yet rides, though not where he planned. Éowyn fights in the hills. Éomer harasses Saruman's supply lines from the Eastamnet, like a thorn in his paw. The Rohirrim are scattered, but not shattered. Denethor's eyes are cold. Scattered allies are little use on the field." Gandalf says nothing for a moment. His gaze drifts to the window where the White City looks east, as it always has, toward doom. "Tell me," he says at last, "if you had the chance to be spared a siege at all by never building walls, would you take it? Or would you rather stand here and know the weight of stone as the blows fall upon it?" Denethor snorts softly. "I would not trade Minas Tirith's walls for any dream of freedom. They are the bones of Gondor." "Just so," Gandalf murmurs. "Remember that when you judge those whose bones are not stone, they must bend or break. Saruman has given them cause to bend. The manner in which they do so may yet shape your fate as much as theirs. On the plains of Rohan, storms roll. Years do not pass yet. It is still only months, but time seems stretched, each day a year, in the lives of those who hide and those who hunt." Helm's Deep becomes a symbol, not merely a place. To Saruman's troops, it is proof of the wizard's might, an unassailable bastion from which raids can be launched, ransoms demanded, roads controlled. To the Rohirrim, it is a scar, a reminder that nothing is invincible. It is also a target, a wound they long to reopen. In Meduseld, Theoden rules still, but his rule is hamstrung. He cannot order an all-out assault on Helm's Deep. His riders are too few, his people too scattered, his granaries too bare after feeding so many refugees. He cannot ignore Saruman entirely. The wizard's reach extends now almost to the very door of Edoras, his scouts riding within sight of the Golden Hall. He rides out often with what men he has to drive off raiders, to escort wagon trains of grain, to reassure villages that the king has not abandoned them. His hair whitens more in a few months than it might have in years. The songs that are sung of him later will be quieter than the ones sung of Helm Hammerhand, but in some ways no less courageous. Once, on a wind-swept ridge, Theoden and Éowyn meet. The reunion is not the one either dreamed. He has ridden out with a small company to investigate reports of a Dunlending warband. She has led an ambush near the same place. Their scouting parties see each other first, arrows nearly loosed in panic, before mutual recognition halts disaster. When Theoden sees his niece approach across the grass, hard-eyed and with a band of grim-faced hill folk at her back, something twists painfully in his chest. "Éowyn," he says, and the name is heavy with years. "I had thought you in Gondor by now." She smiles faintly. "We have been trying. Saruman's net is wide." He searches her face. The lines at the corners of her eyes are new. The set of her mouth is different. He understands, in a flash of almost paternal grief, that he has lost the maiden of the Golden Hall forever. In her place stands something else. "You are tanned like a ranger," he attempts, a shadow of humor. "You are gaunt like a farmer in winter," she returns, with more bite than she intends. There is a silence then, while wind tugs at their cloaks. "I am told," Theoden says softly, "that you saved many in the deep, led them out when all was falling. I led them into hunger and fear," Éowyn says, "into nights of hiding their children beneath bushes when patrols rode past." She looks toward Helm's Deep's distant, faint shape. "And I left you there." Theoden flinches. "I fell before that," he says, "on the causeway. Do not think your leaving killed me. I am more stubborn than that." Her eyes blur. "I did not mean, Uncle, I thought..." He raises a hand. "You did what I would have ordered you to do, had I breath to give it. You protected the living. Do not let grief twist that into cowardice in your mind. I have known cowards. You are not one." She breathes out shakily. "And you," she says, "do not let pride turn wisdom into shame. You did not go to die at the deep. You live. The Mark needs a living king, even if his fortress wears another's flag." They look at each other, really look, and see in each other the same raw thing, a soul that has been forced to bend and hates the bending, but does it anyway for the sake of those who lean on it. "Will we ever take it back?" she asks, barely above a whisper. "Helm's Deep?" Theoden looks west. Smoke hangs above the valley like a smudge on the sky. "Perhaps not in my lifetime," he says. "Perhaps not in yours. Or perhaps sooner than we think, if fortune and folly favor us. The world changes faster now, it seems, than it did in the days of our fathers." He lays a hand on her shoulder. "But remember this, the Hornburg is only stone. Rohan is its people, and they are here, not there." The wind gusts, carrying a faint sound, a horn very far away, blowing a note that could be victory or mourning. They part with no grand oath, no dramatic vow to storm the walls at a given dawn. They part as two leaders of a harried people, each with responsibilities that pull them different ways. The war moves on. When at last the great hammer falls, when Sauron unleashes his full strength against Gondor, when the beacons flare, when Gandalf rides again with Pippin at his side, Rohan answers, but differently. Theoden comes, yes, with as many riders as he can muster. But that muster is thinner. Helm's Deep has bled them. Saruman's raids have cost them mounts and men. The ride of the Rohirrim to Minas Tirith is brave, perhaps braver, because they know so acutely how fragile they are. They still crest the Pelennor at dawn. They still charge. They still change the course of that day. But Éowyn does not come. She cannot. She has too many strings in her hands, refugee camps hidden along the Snowbourn, supply caches buried near Dunharrow, a truce of necessity brokered with a band of desperate Dunlendings, who have begun to doubt whether Saruman's promised land is worth the blood he spills. When Theoden falls beneath the shadow of the Witch King, crushed by the great black steed, there is no disguised shield maiden to stand over him and cry, "No living man am I." The prophecy plays out on a different path. Perhaps Merry, acting alone and unseen, still strikes, or perhaps another hand, unnamed, bears that burden, or perhaps the Lord of the Nazgul turns elsewhere, meeting his doom at hands we do not know. Either way, Theoden dies on a field far from his seized fortress, having never seen it retaken. News comes to Éowyn in a quiet dawn, delivered by a wounded rider who stumbles into one of her hidden camps with eyes like burnt-out coals. She receives it without a visible flinch. Her heart inside makes a dull tearing sound. She has no time to collapse. There are orders to give, patrols to adjust, now that Saruman may sense a slackening in the west's strength. That night, when all are asleep, she walks alone to a hilltop and stands, staring toward Helm's Deep. In the distance, faintly, she can see a glow. Torches on the walls, forges in the valley, the white hand against the stars. "Uncle," she whispers, "I did not bring you home." The wind answers only with the soft susurrus of grass. And yet, she goes on, forcing herself to speak her thoughts. "You did not die there. You died where you chose to stand, not where our enemy hoped to pin you. There is honor in that." Her fists unclench. "Perhaps," she says slowly, "this is what our age asks of us. Not to hold every stone that our fathers held, but to let some go, to bend, to move, to fight where we can, not where pride bids us." She remembers Aragorn's last ride from the deep, the way he turned back on that low hill, sword lifted, not in despair, but defiance. "Not all is lost," he had cried. She had thought then he spoke only of that morning. Now, in the cold light of many losses, she hears it differently. Not all is lost. As long as there are those who remember, who act, who refuse to let fear or pride calcify them, something can yet be saved. In time, Sauron falls. The ring is unmade in the fire from which it came, carried there by small unseen hands far from Rohirrim grass. Barad-dûr collapses. The eye goes dark. His armies, leaderless, break and scatter. Many are hunted down, some slink away to the wild places and become bandits and bogeymen. In Isengard, Saruman hears of this through dark channels. His palantir shows him in jagged, unbearable glimpses the ruin of his old master's work. He laughs. It is not a joyous sound. It is the cracked, bitter laughter of one who has lost and lost again, yet finds in the loss of another a twisted vindication. "So," he says, in the shadow of Orthank's wall, "the great foe falls, and what remains? Men, their cities, their fields, their petty squabbles." He turns his gaze west, to Helm's Deep. "My work was always with men," he says softly, "not with him. Let him vanish into story. I will remain. I will rule what is left." He tightens his grip on the Hornburg, sending more troops to clear the passes, to seize the last stragglers, to stamp out Éowyn's persistent embers. But the world has shifted beneath his feet. Aragorn, who survived the slaughter at the deep by a hair's breadth, a half-crushed body dragged from beneath corpses by a scavenging orc, who saw value in his mail and paid for his greed with his life, has walked a long, hard road since that morning. He has passed through darkness and doubt, through the paths of the dead, through the black ships of the corsairs. He has come at last into his kingship, White Tree blooming once more in his court. As Elisar, king of Gondor and Arnor reunited, he looks north and west with a leader's eye. Rohan is not whole. It limps, but it stands. Éomer has taken the crown after Theoden's fall, weary and unwilling, but determined. He rules from Edoras, which never fell, his grip on the eastern net strong. He has made uneasy peace with some of the Dunlendings, who will no longer serve a wizard whose grand ally has crumbled. He has sent what aid he could to his sister in the hills. Between them, brother and sister have kept Rohan from being carved into fiefdoms by opportunists. Now Aragorn sends word. It comes to Éowyn in the form of a falcon with a leather tube on its leg. She cracks the seal with fingers that tremble only a little. Lady Éowyn of Rohan. The letter reads in a hand both firm and elegant. Once you stood in a fortress that fell. Once I could not save you from the dark that broke over its walls. Now the darkness that fed that storm is gone. One shadow remains in your land, a white one, perched upon stone that is not his. If you would reclaim that stone, Gondor will stand beside you at the bottom, a simple mark, a tree crowned with 7 stars. She closes her eyes. For years, she has told herself that Helm's Deep is a scar they must live with, not a wound to be reopened, that to throw themselves against it now would be to reenact the folly Saruman once wished of them. But now the balance of the world is different. Saruman is no longer one of 2 great powers vying for supremacy. He is a relic clinging to a stolen fortress. His armies are strong, but finite. His forges ring, but his supplies are harried on every road. His alliances with Harad and Khan falter without Sauron's gold and fear to bind them. Lady? Tora asks at her elbow, now nearly a woman grown. What does it say? Éowyn looks around the camp. Faces lift to hers, hopeful, wary, hardened by years of hiding. Gamling's hair is almost entirely white. Hilda's gaze is a challenge and a trust. It says, Éowyn replies slowly, that the king in the south sees us, and that he offers his hand. She looks west to where the white hand still mars the sky. Tell them, she says, straightening, to sharpen their swords. The siege of Helm's Deep that follows is not like the one before. This time, the fortress is the lair, not the refuge. Gondor's banners fly beside the horse head of Rohan as an allied host moves into the deeping coombe. Éomer rides at their head, Elisar beside him, white and green cloaks snapping in the wind. They have learned they do not rush headlong against strengthened walls. They encircle slowly, cutting off water, food, signals. They harry every sortie, dwarven sappers from the lonely mountain, sent by Dain's successor in respect for Gimli's tales of the caves, undermine outworks from below. Within, Saruman rages and plots. The Palantir shows him little now. Its visions are murky, its reach curtailed, as if the fall of Sauron has dimmed all such lenses. Still he stares, refusing to abandon this last vantage. This is not how it ends, he snarls. Grima, older, thinner, eyes sunken with years of servitude, watches his master pace like a caged wolf. There is no devotion left in him, only a tired sour cling to the only power he has known. Perhaps, Lord, he ventures, we bargain? You have knowledge, they have need. You could teach, advise. Saruman whirls on him. Be their pet wizard, fetched out at festivals to tell old tales? No. His eyes blaze. I am Curanir the Wise. I shaped the thinking of kings when your father squabbled over sheep. I will not crawl before upstart heirs in white trees and straw roofs. He turns back to the window, to the ring of siege fires. If this fortress falls, he murmurs, more to himself now, it will not be because I bent. It will be because the world broke. Down below, Éowyn stands beside Aragorn at the head of a battering ram, watching the first stones begin to fall from carefully undermined walls. It feels wrong, she says, half to herself, to break what was once ours. Aragorn nods slowly. Sometimes, he says, to heal, one must cut away infected flesh. Helm's Deep, under Saruman's hand, is not the same fortress your fathers knew. Its stones remember their touch, yes, but they also remember the feet of his orcs, the smoke of his forges. When we take it, it cannot stand unchanged. It must be remade or abandoned. Abandoned. She glances at him sharply. Perhaps for a time, he says, or forever. That choice will be yours and Eomer's. But know this, no wall should make a people. It should only serve them. If they become its servants, they are lost. She looks up at the looming shape of the Hornburg, scars new and old running like veins across its face. Once, I would have died to keep it from falling, she says. Now, I think I would raise it myself rather than see it stand as a monument to our chains. He studies her, respect in his gaze. You have grown strong in the hard ways, he says. I have grown necessary, she corrects quietly. Strength is what songs talk about. Necessity is what keeps children from starving. The siege tightens. Saruman tries sorties, sallying forth with his Uruk-hai. In sudden bursts of disciplined ferocity, they are met with equally disciplined shields. The free peoples have learned his drills. Many of the soldiers facing him now are veterans of fights against his own troops. He tries sorcery, hurling down storms of fire and shards of stone. Gandalf, come at last to this valley, counters as he can. The air crackles between tower and camp. In the end, it is not a single dramatic assault that breaks Helm's Deep, but accumulation. A sapped tunnel collapses, a sidewall crumbles. A water source, redirected by cunning, forces the garrison to ration. A Dunlending captain opens a postern gate in the night, letting a small Gondorian force into the lower levels before being caught and killed. The fortress that stood for centuries, that fell swiftly once in a storm of new-made industry, now dies by inches. Saruman, cornered at last in the high hall of the Hornburg, stands where Theoden once sat. The stones echo with ghosts, the laughter of Rohirrim, the clash of their cups, the deep horns of the mark. Éowyn walks up the long aisle, sword at her side, mail gleaming faintly in the torchlight. Aragorn and Éomer flank her, but they hang back as she ascends the last few steps alone. Saruman looks at her with an expression that might, in another man, be called curiosity. So, he says, the king's canary has grown talons. Éowyn's jaw tightens, but she does not rise to the bait. You sit in a seat that does not belong to you, she says, in a hall you defiled, in a land you burned. He shrugs as if these are trivialities, stones and straw, better used under a will that sees further than their streets. You cling to old names. I see roads, armies, aqueducts, machines. I would have lifted this people from the mire of their mud and oaths by breaking their backs, she says, by straightening them. He retorts, your world is ending, child. The days of wandering kings and chance victories are done. The age of men has begun. It will be ruled by those who know how to shape it. He leans forward, eyes glittering. I offer you this. Keep the Hornburg. Rule here, under my guidance. Learn from me. I am not Sauron to crush all beneath one boot. I would have lords, lieutenants. You have shown spine. Serve, and you may rule others in turn. For a heartbeat, Éowyn sees it, herself in this hall. Banners newly hung, people fed and sheltered by the very walls she fought to retake. Power, clear and uncluttered, without the compromises and half-measures of scattered camps. Then she remembers the smell of burning farms, the sound of children crying in caves, the feel of sneaking under hooks of torchlight because the open road was death. "You have never understood us," she says quietly. "You think we crave rule. We crave mornings without fear, fields we can tend without hoofbeats on the horizon, songs that are not about loss." She steps closer, sword tip gleaming. "I would sooner see these walls tumble into the coombe than hold them by your favor." Saruman's gaze flickers to Aragorn, to Eomer. "And you approve this barbarism?" he asks them. "You would destroy a fortress of such strength, such history?" Aragorn's eyes are steady. "I approve that it not be yours," he says. "Beyond that, the choice is Rohan's. My cities are not barns for their cattle, nor are their strongholds outposts for my will." "That is the difference between us, Saruman," Eomer adds, voice rough. "You speak of history, old man. My people's blood is in these stones. You use them to build a knife at our throat. If they must be broken to remove it, so be it. We will build again elsewhere, on our terms." Saruman laughs, a short, harsh bark. "Children," he says, "all of you, throwing away the tools that might have saved you from the next darkness because they once lay in an enemy's hand." His gaze sharpens, a last glint of malice. "Very well. Kill me then. Tear down your walls, dance in the ashes. When the next shadow comes, and it will, remember this day and know that you chose it." Eowyn meets his gaze. "We do not kill you," she says. For a moment, confusion crosses his face. "We will not make you a martyr in the minds of those you have twisted," she goes on. "You will stand trial before the people whose land you scarred. You will listen to their stories. You will be judged, and then we will see what sentence fits a wizard who forgot that wisdom's first duty is mercy." He sneers. "Mercy? From you? From us," she corrects. "We who have bent and not broken, that is something you will never understand." And so Saruman is taken from the high seat, not by a sword's point, but in chains. In the months that follow, Helm's Deep undergoes one last transformation. The great tower's banner does not immediately change. Eowyn orders the white hand left hanging for a time. Beneath the horse head, raised once more. The two symbols flap uneasily together, a living reminder. People in the mark argue. Some say the Hornburg should be raised wholly, its stones scattered, so that no tyrant might ever again make it his lair. Others say it should be held and strengthened. It is too valuable a defensive position to abandon. Still others, remembering caves and smoke, suggest it be turned into something else entirely. A refuge only, not a fortress, its walls never again to be used to project power into the countryside. In the end, a compromise, uneasy and imperfect, is reached. The main walls are left standing, but many of the outer works Saruman built are torn down. The great forges are quenched, their chimneys toppled. The deep dungeons he dug beneath the Hornburg are opened and flooded, their chains rusting under clear water. The glittering caves remain a place of wonder, but also of history. Eowyn decrees that part of them be left as they were during the siege, soot-stained, bearing the marks of small hands on cold stone, a reminder of what never again truly means. No permanent garrison is stationed there. Instead, the deep becomes a place the Rohirrim come to in times of flood or famine or war, but they do not live their daily lives under its shadow. Rangers watch from its heights, shepherds shelter in its halls when storms come. It is no longer a center of command, but a tool, one among many. Children grow who know that once a wizard ruled from these walls. They hear, round fires, the tales of Theoden's fall and Eowyn's flight, of Aragorn's doomed ride and Gandalf's late coming, of how pride and stone nearly broke them, and how bending saved them. One evening, years later, Tora stands at the mouth of the caves, looking out over a valley that has begun to heal. Grass grows again where trenches once smoked. Young trees, planted by hands that remember the old forests, sway in the breeze. The scars are there, but green runs through them. Beside her, Eowyn, no longer so young but still straight-backed, rests one hand on the stone. "We live," Tora says simply. Eowyn nods. "And we remember," she replies. That is all any age can ask in the end. The sun sets, staining the Hornburg's walls in red and gold. For a moment, the fortress looks almost as it did in the days before Saruman, before Wormtongue, before storms of iron. But it is not the same. It never will be, and that perhaps is its truest salvation. Far away, in some forgotten corner of Middle-earth, wind blows dust over the ruins of towers and the bones of armies. New grass pushes up between the stones that once echoed with the tramp of marching feet. No one now alive remembers every choice that led the world to this quieter age. They know only that kingdoms rose and fell, that walls crumbled and were rebuilt or left to moss, that people fled and fought and returned. In the twilight, as stars kindle one by one over the white mountains, a horn sounds from Helm's Deep. It is not an alarm. It is not a summons to battle. It is a simple, clear note, calling shepherds in, telling children in the nearby folds that night has come and supper waits. It echoes off the cliff face, gentler now, no longer a cry of defiance, but a thread of continuity. For an instant, upon that sound, one might almost glimpse the ghost of a king in mail upon the causeway, spear in hand, eyes bright, unclouded. One might almost hear a voice crying, "Forth your lingas!" carried down a corridor of time that never was. Then the echo fades. In its place remains only the quiet and the knowledge that in this world, Theoden fell at Helm's Deep. Saruman ruled all of Rohan from stolen stone. And yet, through bending, through loss, through refusal to let walls define them, the Rohirrim endured. Above the dark mouth of the glittering caves, a small handprint, long since turned to faint dust, still marks the stone where a child once steadied herself in fear. No one brushes it away.